coming downstream with sludge, with debris, with mud. Dangerous scenes and pictures that were beaming from Shimla. The region is on high alert. Residents, needless to say, gripped by fear. But so far, no reports of casualty or property loss that has been reported officially. Visuals on your screens. This is in Kullu in Himachal Pradesh. Shrikhand Mahadev is where the cloudburst actually took place.
वाला गाड़ी वाला आया कौन गाड़ी वाला
Dangerous scenes that we're getting from Shimla in Himachal Pradesh, cloudburst in Kullu. As the monsoon fury continues in Himachal, more rain is also expected. At least that's what the Met Department and those updates tell us. No casualties have been reported. No loss of public or private property has been reported. But a cloudburst and flash floods that we're learning of right now. This is Shrikhand Mahadev, where one cloudburst has happened. And of course, in the Shimla district, in Nanti, this is in Rampur, where a separate cloudburst incident has happened. Mohit Malhotra, my colleague, joining us on the broadcast with the latest details. Mohit, दर्शकों की किस प्रकार से सहायता कर सकते हैं? क्लाउडबर्स्ट की अगर बात की जाए तो कितनी रेनफॉल की हुई, कहां से किस प्रकार की रिपोर्ट आ रही है? क्या एसडीआरएफ, एनडीआरएफ की टीमें तैनात हैं? क्या कुछ बता सकते हैं इस समय?
देखिए, हिमाचल प्रदेश में पहले से ही एनडीआरएफ और एसडीआरएफ को जो रेनी सीजन आता है उसमें अलर्ट पर रख दिया जाता है। और ये जो इंसिडेंट हुआ है, जो विजुअल्स अभी हम अपने व्यूअर्स को दिखा रहे हैं, ये शिमला के ऊपर काफी ऊपर पहाड़ी इलाका है, रामपुर बुशर। वहां पर एक बरसाती नाला है जिसको गानवी रिवर वहां पर कहा जाता है। उसके अंदर अचानक से क्लाउडबर्स्ट की घटना के बाद काफी तेज वहां पर मलबा आया और काफी तेज बहाव जो विजुअल्स में आप देख रहे हैं। तो अब तक की जानकारी के मुताबिक कोई वहां पर कोई व्यक्ति मिसिंग हुआ हो, ऐसी कोई जानकारी तो अब तक जो लोकल्स हैं उन्होंने नहीं दी है। लेकिन वहां पर कुछ घरों को, दुकानों को, जो ब्रिजेस होते हैं जो गांवों को जोड़ते हैं हिली एरिया में एक दूसरे के साथ, वो जो ब्रिज हैं वो बह गए हैं। इसके अलावा एक पुलिस पोस्ट थी, वो भी इस मलबे के अंदर पूरी तरह से खत्म हो चुकी है। कुछ शॉप्स को और घरों को नुकसान हुआ है। लेकिन अब तक जो लोकल्स हैं उनका ये कहना है कि वहां पर आसपास के लोग अलर्ट हो गए थे पहले से ही। इसी वजह से अब तक किसी के इस मलबे की चपेट में आने के या फिर मिसिंग होने की जानकारी अब तक सामने नहीं आई है।
That's a real positive development. मोहित, हम साथ ही साथ ये कुछ तस्वीरें देख रहे हैं, सारी तस्वीरें बहुत भयानक पेश होती हैं सामने टीवी पर। लेकिन क्या अब तक किसी भी बचाव अभियान की स्थिति बन रही है, कोई रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशन जिसके बारे में कोई ऑफिशियल कंफर्मेशन मिल सके?
देखिए, पूरा का पूरा जो इलाका है, शिमला डिस्ट्रिक्ट तो शिमला पड़ता है, लेकिन शिमला से काफी ऊपर है, काफी दूर हिली एरिया है। यहाँ तक जाना भी काफी एक तरह से चैलेंज होता है। तो यहाँ पर अभी जो लोकल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है वो अपनी तरफ से जो भी कर सकता था, वहां पर लोगों को सबसे पहले निकालना था और अलर्ट करना था। उनके लिए कुछ ऑल्टरनेटिव वहां पर व्यवस्था की गई है, कुछ स्कूल्स वगैरह में उनके रुकने का अरेंजमेंट किया गया है, तो वो सब किया गया है। और उसके बाद जो एक प्रोटोकॉल है कि क्लाउडबर्स्ट के इंसिडेंट के बाद जिस तरह से पूरा का पूरा एक रेस्क्यू और सर्च ड्राइव वहां पे चलाया जाता है, वो कल जैसे ही दिन निकलेगा पूरा किया जाएगा, क्योंकि अभी वहां पर लगातार रुक रुक कर बारिश हो रही है।
All right, Mohit, we're going to keep coming back to you as and when you have more for us. We're going to let you off the hook, try to get us more developments at this point in time. But we're also joined by Mr. Vimlendu Jha, environmental activist. Many thanks for speaking to us, Mr. Jha. How do you look at these developments? Just a couple of days after what we saw in Dharali, you were speaking to News 9 as well. Now, separate cloudburst episodes that we're learning of in Shimla, in Himachal Pradesh. What is Mother Nature really trying to tell us?
So I think, it's a clear sign that we have actually been taking these climate events very, very lightly as a country, as a policy, as governance, as action on ground. Repeatedly for the last several years, we've seen more and more in the sense in terms of frequent as well as intense climate events that's been taking place. And of course, it's been happening throughout the country, but more so in the vulnerable ecological space called the Himalayas. And this year itself, we've seen more than 200 people have lost their lives in Himachal. And then, of course, we don't know how many people have actually died in Himachal, in Dharali, in that sense. So it clearly talks about that climate change is not just an academic discourse. It's something which is very, very real. And India is at the forefront in terms of facing the brunt of it. And mostly the hilly areas are the ones that's actually, because of these extreme events, be it cloud bursts that we're talking about today, or flash floods for that matter, or glacial lake, outbursts, or the leaks that we're talking about, overflows that we're talking about. So, it's really, really scary and something that the government should really take it very seriously. We need to really look at immediate response. We need to really have a system in place for immediate response, but at the same time, in long term, when we are aware that next year and year after, there'll be more and more frequent and intense climate events, what's the plan? What is the preparation? What is the village level or perhaps district level, state level, or for that matter, the entire region level climate mitigation plan that we have? As of now, we don't have any plan, and that's the reason why we actually have so many events, so many accidents, so many disasters, and all of them, of course, we're looking at the disaster or the impact of these cloudbursts also gets accentuated or gets multifold primarily because of the construction, urbanization, or the kind of development that we have followed in these hilly areas in the Himalayas.
You know what, Mr. Jha, you very nicely summed it all up. But it takes me back to about 5 years back when words like glacial lake, outbursts weren't as common. Are we looking at a future where GLOFs is going to be a common terminology, Himalayan horrors happening one after the other? And these are clear signs and signals and messages. The high-powered committee and its recommendations were clearly not paid actual attention and heed towards. Is it time for us to now look at policy reform to start things from tomorrow?
Absolutely, and you look at how Supreme Court completely ignored the Chopra Committee report, the high-powered committee report, which talked about the vulnerability of the Himalayas, and also the fact that there'll be more and more climate events. And if we keep following the kind of development in terms of broadening of roads, or urbanization, or hydroelectric power plants, or many other infrastructure projects, tunneling, other projects that we've been taking, there'll be more and more such events. As in, the thing is that right now when we look at cloudburst, everything that happens in the sky perhaps is not because of the local reasons, but whatever happens on the ground in terms of the impact getting multifold is because of the way we've actually looked to cut down the slopes, the deforestation that has taken place, how the river bodies have been choked, or the natural flow of the streams or the rain-fed rivers have actually been completely blocked by the road construction and everything else. And right now in Dharali also what we've seen that there are a lot of these block events that's actually happening, overflow, and it's not just in one area because we know what does climate change actually do. So we're talking about glacial melts, we're talking about major glacial avalanche of sorts that's actually happening, that's taking place in various parts of Himalaya. So I think it's high time, when the way Supreme Court takes cognizance into other things, it's high time that the Supreme Court, ideally this is a matter of governance and not of our judiciary, but we know how our country unfortunately operates, where the pressure from the top is what perhaps fits the system, and hope that the Supreme Court takes cognizance of this.
Mr. Jha, what do you think should be the starting point? Because in the pictures that we got from Dharali, the pictures that we're getting from Shimla again, look at the amount of encroachment. Hotels as far as you can see, not just 2, 3 stories, 4 stories, somewhere 5 stories. When I look at the hills, come every summer, it's traffic snarls after the other. It looks like we're putting too much burden on our mountains. So from where I'm looking at things, and I could be wrong, please come in, the starting point needs to be no entry boards on these mountains to, look at the burden the mountains face as well.
So I think, there are existing laws. I mean, if you look at Dharali, that was actually a Bhagirathi eco-sensitive zone, and therefore the kind of construction that should have happened, both in terms of urbanization or government infrastructure, should be appropriate to the kind of ecology or the warnings that Bhagirathi eco-sensitive zone should have had. So indeed, as in, just to put a sign is not a solution in that sense. Of course, we need to look at the carrying capacity of the Himalayas. We've looked at what happened, by the way, last year itself. We've seen things, being really worse in Shimla and in Mandi and in Manali, and this year again we've seen the repeat. So far, right now, imagine every news channel covered Dharali for 3 days. But since then, we don't even know how many people have actually died. The death count has stopped at 5 and injured at 0. And how is it even possible? That's completely disappeared from the news cycle, as if nobody got injured when you saw thousands, and like you saw hundreds of buildings actually floating in water as if and crumbling as pack of cards. So we need to really look at this from a long-term perspective at the same time, rather than looking at a 20-year cycle of how do we as a country respond to climate change events or climate extreme events. We need to also have a shorter plan of 5 years and also of next year. Mitigation is extremely important, but at the same time adapting to these new realities. Climate change or climate event, cloudbursts, are our new reality, and therefore we'll have to look at our urbanization and put rules. As in there are rules. There is supposed to be an early warning system. There is something called IMD that we actually have that is supposed to look at these events and similarly do sort of a monitoring or sort of an evaluation of looking at where will the damage be, and therefore can we take the population out of the harm's way in that sense. And that's something which is completely missing on the ground. Ram Bharose is what our mountains are surviving right now somehow.
Well, Mr. Jha, before I let you go, one final question. And of course, I do need to put this on record as well, that News 9 continued to carry, Dharali was always in our scope. There are no official figures that are coming out of it. Our reporters are out there on the ground. They're trying their best to get through to the death toll again, Mr. Jha. But, you're looking at these visuals. Help us, could you describe some of these visuals for us? How treacherous they look to you? What kind of death toll? What kind of damage to public and private infrastructure? Could you assess and estimate from your own experience when you're looking at these visuals of 2 separate cloudbursts in Shimla?
Unfortunately, I'm not watching your live. I'm on the phone right now, so I don't exactly know what you're showing. But having known the kind of cloudbursts that have taken place over the last couple of years in the same region, in the Himalayas, depending on where does the cloudburst happen. One is, of course, if it happens in an urbanized area, in areas where there are more and more settlement, of course, there's an immediate loss of life and livelihood. But if it actually happens anywhere in the Himalayas, the kind of cloudburst that we, like for example in Dharali, it wasn't in Dharali in that sense. It was perhaps a couple of kilometers.
About the glacial lake outburst, because many people were contradicting each other about what happened in Dharali. Was that a glacial lake outburst that happened there?
Of course. As in there are a lot of from the IMD figures of average rainfall, it doesn't look like a cloudburst. But irrespective of whether it was a cloudburst or whether it was a glacial overflow or an avalanche in that sense, we're talking about the flow of water, steep water, with sludge and mud coming down, caused by whatever, caused by a cloudburst or caused by a glacial outburst. We don't really know, but at the end of the day, impact is very, very similar, if not the same in that sense. And therefore, in these cases, I think people downstream will be affected, and it is going to be very, very harmful. As in, hope nobody is dead.
So the time is nigh. That's what Vimlendu Jha. Many thanks for speaking to us here, Mr. Vimlendu Jha, environmental activist with us here on News 9. As we're tracking developments from Shimla. 2 separate flash floods that we're learning of. One in the Srikhand Mahadev, where a cloudburst happened, and the other one in Rampur in Shimla district at the Nanti area, where exactly the cloudburst was reported from. Again, major messaging by the Himalayas from our own mountains. Take it easy. Do not overburden the mountains, the encroachment. Take a look at it for yourselves. Everything that comes in the way and in the wake of this flash flood is swept away completely. The wounds of Dharali still fresh in the minds of all the viewers, and of course the local residents panicking at this point in time. Major policy reform that is needed, and stop looking at those reels that come on social media platforms where you can dip your feet in the river and have a nice gala breakfast over there as well, because that's hurting our ecology as well. We're going to slip into a quick commercial breather here. Ladies and gentlemen, top developments right on the other side. An entire village in Shimla seems to be inundated because of these flash floods. Let's hope for good sense to prevail, and the SDRF and NDRF that have already begun the restoration and the repair work. A quick commercial breather, top developments right on the other side.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
एसोसिएट स्पॉन्सर डायना प्रीमियम ब्यूटी सोप, पहली झलक करे खूबसूरत।
मारो गाँव